Thanks for clicking in. This is Michael Thelander with Axiad. Is your MFA broken? Well, we're going to ask 3 questions to help you find out. And in the process, we're going to provide some answers on how you can fix your MFA if indeed it is broken. Multi-factor authentication, basically something you know, something you are, and something you have, breaks down into a whole bunch of different components. It can be in older implementations, SMS one-time passwords. It can be more complex factors and functions within your multi-factor authentication. Which of these are you currently using? There's lots of ways to achieve MFA. A lot has happened, though, in the last couple of years. 5 years ago was really the start of the MFA renaissance, where a lot of people were implementing MFA across their entire organization, not just for critical privilege users in their infrastructure, but everywhere in their infrastructure. But in that intervening 5 years, the adversaries started focusing on MFA and looking at ways to compromise our MFA. And realizing that if we can't deliver phishing-resistant MFA, we're going to start running into trouble really fast in terms of exploits. And we see that. We saw that recently in 2021. We saw OTP interception that was being bots that were manufactured and running specifically to intercept OTP, powered by functions like Telegram. In 2022, we saw the Uber hack through really MFA with push bombing that was actually driving administrators to distraction and causing them to let people in through their MFA process. And now in 2023, we're looking at new tools on the market, available on the black market, like EvilGenX, that's let people of sort of lower levels of skill actually implement a man-in-the-middle or phishing-in-the-middle solution to foil their MFA. How does that even work? Well, our friends at HelpNet Security did a really nice graphic that shows how that works. You have a victim that's trying to log into a site, log into an application, external or internal. They enter their credentials and whatever they're using for MFA. That can be the push token, that can be a number matching system. But inside of that, somebody has implemented a man-in-the-middle phishing kit, like the EvilGenX kit that's available. That kit forwards those credentials and MFA onto the end site, but actually harvests once they return the session cookie and the components that allow you to provide access, harvest out the credentials, harvest out some of the key information and session cookie, and then deliver that back to the victim. We now have a fully implemented phishing kit within an online process that's using MFA. How much does that cost, you might ask? Well, really, it's a lot less than you would think, $300 maybe to $700 on the black market. So with this, starting off in kind of the early 2020s, the White House started looking at lots of different ways to protect federal infrastructure in particular and beef up multi-factor authentication. They delivered the executive order on improving the nation's cybersecurity in 2021 that, of course, tasked CISA and the OMB with coming up with ways to improve cybersecurity requirements. And then in 2022, kind of did the executive order on the nation's cybersecurity, where they were very specific, especially for federal agencies, about using phishing-resistant MFA, that was the requirement to enable that. But that, of course, what happens in the federal space doesn't always translate to strong requirements in the commercial space or in the public sector. As recently as this last spring, March 21 of 2024, a really interesting article came out talking about the exploit in legitimate platforms leveraging AI and also phishing, man-in-the-middle phishing kits to foil MFA and to bypass those controls. So we've seen this constant sort of barrage of different ways to foil MFA, even though that's been our sort of standard authentication method going back 5 or 6 years. Well, what's the difference? How do we make it phishing resistant? CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency out of the United States, has some very good definitions of what makes phishing resistant MFA. What are the things, the capabilities that it has to have to call it phishing resistant? And there's really 2. They want a solution to have MFA that leverages FIDO or WebAuthn authentication, or that leverages public key infrastructure. And they say this because really we're on this journey. We're on this journey from the initial or original phases of MFA with using MSS, which can be foiled now, as we know, or voice MFA, or app-based MFA with push notification, number matching, to phishing-resistant MFA using one of those two functions, either FIDO or using PKI, public key infrastructure base. So the goal is to get to phishing-resistant MFA. With our take on that in particular here at Axiad, we're looking at PKI-based MFA because it provides strong security, according to CISA. It is sensible for large and complex organizations, where most of our customers with 500 to 1,000 or more employees that are trying to use authentication and MFA tools, or organizations that can leverage TLS, the components of PKI, within their existing infrastructure. So question one is, do you have phishing resistant MFA? Well, if you've got FIDO or if you've got PKI, you've got that in place. Question two is your organization currently using TLS certificates or PKI? The answer in most cases is yes. Obviously, PKI is the foundational infrastructure that gets our websites delivered, our applications, our services delivered out to the world. So in this digitally transformed age, virtually every organization is using public key infrastructure of some kind. PKI happens to work really, really well with FIDO for authentication in multi-factor environments. You can use the FIDO-based authentication to cover really your browser-based authentication use cases, your single sign-on and applications that are all browser-based, and in maybe your Windows workstations, and that might cover 50 to 60% of your use cases. But what about all of those other things? You've got other workstations that have Mac OS, that have Linux, mobile implementations. You've got your Azure server authentication that needs to be done. Well, those can leverage PKI-based authentication to provide you with a multi-factor component. And really, you can, in these two scenarios, using FIDO in conjunction with PKI, you can really kind of cover all of the bases, fill those gaps, and have shared authentication in key use cases for those high-privileged accounts, or for areas where you have sort of maturing infrastructure where you're transitioning from one platform to another. So question two is, are you using TLS certificates or PKI? As we said, most people are. But when we say PKI and we look at what's involved in PKI infrastructure or public key infrastructure, everything from external parties, the certificate authorities, registration authorities, all of the workflow that has to go into creating PKI, a lot of times people will pull back and they'll say, PKI, it's really complicated. It might be very error prone. It might be too difficult. Our existing staff, our current cybersecurity staff is less trained on PKI, say, than the staff was 5 years or even 10 years ago, and it could be too difficult for us to get our hands around. But the big question is, what if it's not? What if you can get PKI in a box? Well, we'll put a pin in that, if you will, and go to the third question. Do you currently use our current generation or next generation authenticators, hardware-based authenticators, hardware tokens to authenticate? The current generation of these is very, very capable. It's also less money, less expensive than they have been in the past. And they're very capable to do multi-factor authentication with lots of components and sockets on it to enable PIV authentication, or if you're in the military or if you're in government environments where you have to have PIV enabled authentication, digital signatures, key management, card authentication. Axiad partners with really all of the manufacturers, the big manufacturers of these keys, Yubico, IDEMIA, Talos, Phation, and provides a solution that helps us do credential management on those keys and leverage all of the capabilities that they have. And in some cases, mixed key environments where you've actually got both of those. So question three is, have you considered using these authentication tokens and keys? Axiad delivers the Axiad Cloud solution. And when you think of Axiad Cloud, there's really three things that it's capable of doing: managing credentials across all of that key infrastructure for you, whether those are PKI or TLS certificates that's being managed across those, or even managing FIDO-based credentials across those, giving you a single pane of glass to manage credentials across whatever authentication methods, tools, platforms you have available. We also provide, to back that up and support that, cloud-based enterprise PKI, a cloud-based solution that allows you to leverage PKI effectively as a service and not have to invest all of the expertise, the time, and the energy to kind of build and develop your own PKI solution. So fully cloud-based with its own built-in certificate authorities based on your recommendation or your specifications and requirements, and HSMs that makes a very simplified PKI experience. And then within that, Axiad Cloud also delivers a web authentication service that leverages all of the current protocols and methods that you need to provide authentication at scale in a large enterprise with different requirements for different kinds of users in different distributed environments. We do this by providing the glue in the middle of all of your identity and access management ecosystem. So everything from the PKI manufacturers, we have integrations with Microsoft Prime Key, Entrust, and so on. So on the top right-hand side over there, your IDP providers, whether that's Okta or ForgeRock or Microsoft that's providing that IDP, machine identities from discovery sources like Venafi or AppViewX, IGA from SailPoint. Obviously, we already touched on the bottom right there, working with hardware devices, but also working with PAM in your environments. But providing this Axiad cloud system that plugs into all of these different solutions and provides the glue of your IAM infrastructure. And what that looks like when you get this phishing resistant authentication, you have people authenticated across a broad spectrum of targets, whether that's people, machines, or different interactions. You can provide multi-factor authentication across all of that. That's phishing resistant and based on TLS certificates or PKI. You also have a cloud platform that delivers that solution, a hardened instance, no shared secrets, HSM storage included within it that's delivered as part of the solution. And then in terms of workflow, everything that to enable an end-to-end multi-factor authentication solution is operationalized. We operationalize it through providing identity management, credential management, unique capabilities like AirLock that make it really easy for you to do credential management, revocation, renewal, unique capabilities like MyCircle that sort of solve some of your help desk problems that can occur related to identity management and multi-factor authentication, and of course, complete reporting. This is the kind of solution that enables Axiad customers across all different segments to actually deliver MFA, whether these customers are using just the cloud-based PKI portion of it or the authentication portion, or really the credential management all the way out to managing their end users, a broad spectrum of customers in both government and commercial sectors, in highly sensitive regulated sectors like finance, as well as sciences and manufacturing, leveraging solutions from Axiad to deliver MFA. Want to thank you for taking a few minutes to listen to Axiad and talking about, is your MFA broken or is it not? Please click on any of the links below to get more information about Axiad and how we can help customers provide phishing resistant, fully advanced multi-factor authentication. Thank you.